Literally no offense to anything. They're very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that backward story of 7 dwarves living in a cave. What the are you doing, man?
Because right now there's more dwarves on this podcast than there are in the new Snow White movie. And that's probably due to Peter Dinklage.
Yeah. This would have been a lot better if they, had a strong male along with her, a prince, if it wasn't about socialism, if they didn't remove the dwarves, if they had real dwarves.
Peter Dinklage comes into this as when Rachel Zegler was cast, he laughed at Disney saying it's fake progressivism.
They're remaking the movie, they just got rid of the dwarves. Okay,
but what do they call them?
Why would they get rid of the dwarves, though?
Magical creatures.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the biggest controversies to hit Disney in a long time, the so-called Snow White disaster, and the surprising rumor that lead actress Rachel Zegler is blaming actor Peter Dinklage for it. Let's break down exactly what happened, who said what, and why this remake caused so much uproar. For a while, the live-action remake of Disney's very first animated classic promised to be a spellbinding reimagining. Everyone wanted to see how a modern Snow White would be brought to life by one of Hollywood's rising stars, Rachel Zegler. Then, almost out of nowhere, the chatter took a darker turn. Rumors flew about production problems, confused rewrites, and tensions that ran far deeper than anyone suspected. It all spiraled after a single interview, one that sparked a wave of controversy unlike anything Disney had faced in years. Initially, this project looked like a recipe for success. Rachel Zegler, fresh off a standout role in a high-profile musical, signed on to play the iconic heroine. Fans were curious. Disney had pledged to modernize a fairy tale older than most living people, so excitement ran high. How would they handle Snow White's innocence and the dwarf's comedic charm in a way that felt fresh for the next generation?
Said it's now being reported they won't be little people and will be called the Seven Bandits instead, which has fans outraged. With a $200 million budget, this is likely going to fail and cost Disney $100 million. With that, I'm Charles Pearl. Subscribe to learn something.
But from the first announcement, murmurs of debate began simmering. Some wondered if changing elements of the classic story might go too far, while others thought it was long overdue to address outdated stereotypes. Then there were the so-called Disney purists who believed any major twist to the 1937 narrative would ruin its timeless magic. Despite that, the overall atmosphere stayed fairly optimistic, with Disney fans hoping the adaptation would strike the right balance between honoring tradition and moving forward. Those hopes didn't last long, though. Quiet rumblings suggested this was no ordinary production. Behind the cheerful press releases, sources claimed the creative team was struggling to nail down a storyline that felt both inclusive and true to the fairy tale's legacy. Still, few expected the bombshell that was about to drop, and the source of it surprised even the most ardent Disney critics. Into this whirlpool of speculation stepped Peter Dinklage, an actor known for speaking candidly about representation. He stunned not only fans, but also the film's creators when he called out potential stereotypes within the Snow White plot. Dinklage made it clear he was tired of simplistic portrayals of people with dwarfism, and he didn't mince words.
I really hope that I have a similar heart to hers. She has this beautiful, unending kindness and positive outlook towards the world and the world around us. I wish I could be as positive as she is at times. That's certainly a difference we have, but I think it's a very human thing to not always see the bright side. But that is part of the beauty of Snow White. It has been for 88 years now that she just sees the good in everyone and everything. And I hope that I and so many people who watch this film can embody that as well.
One statement in particular spread like wildfire, framing Disney as backward if they kept the dwarfs living in a cave or if they defaulted to old cliches. Instantly, social media lit up. Some applauded Dinklage for being the voice that Hollywood needed. Others argued he was overcomplicating a fairy tale that had long been beloved. Still more had conflicting takes. Was he standing in the way of job opportunities for actors with dwarfism who wanted to be part of a major production? Or was his call to modernize these characters the jolt Disney needed to avoid outdated tropes? With every viral tweet, the pressure on Disney ballooned. It wasn't just a simple matter of, how will they modernize Snow White anymore? The question became, how can Disney avoid perpetuating stereotypes without erasing the dwarfs altogether? Caught in the crosshairs was Rachel Zegler, the charismatic star left grappling with a story now under fire before filming could even wrap. Dinklage's interview set off a chain reaction few could have predicted. Some say the studio immediately panicked. Alleged insider reports claim script rewrites kicked into high gear, fueled by fear that Disney would appear insensitive in an era where public perception can make or break a film. According to these whispers, entire scenes were flipped around or scrapped. Creative disagreements erupted. Directors, producers, and script consultants clashed over how much to tweak a story known worldwide. Test audiences began murmuring about tonal confusion. One moment felt whimsical and comedic, the next felt awkwardly forced to fit modern messaging. Rumor had it that a few top-level Disney executives attended a secretive screening and walked out looking deeply concerned. The term Snow White disaster started circulating, though few believed it would stick. At least not yet. Rachel Zegler, meanwhile, was reportedly caught in the crossfire of these frantic changes. One day the script demanded she deliver a tongue-in-cheek monologue about self-empowerment. The next, it swung back to a near-carbon copy of the original story, minus a few dwarfs who may have been replaced by magical creatures. Word spread that the whole production felt up in the air, with more questions than answers. Would the dwarfs remain in the story? Would they be digitally altered?
The fact that this film is completely falling apart, we're going to take a look at how bad this movie is actually doing in the box office, because it is hilariously bad. It is a complete and total humiliation for Disney. And like I said, they deserve it all, okay?
And most of all, could Disney pull off a cohesive movie with so much sudden interference? Wherever people turned, the conversation about Snow White got louder. Classic Disney fans voiced worry. They wanted the dwarfs to stay, but not in a way that mocked anyone or felt cartoonish. Others thought the dwarfs should be replaced by entirely new characters to sidestep harmful tropes. Some invoked nostalgic memories, adamant that the charm of the 1937 film lay in its dwarfs' humor, unity, and distinct personalities. Social media platforms became a battleground. On one side, supporters of Dinklage's stance reiterated the importance of respectful representation. On the other side, critics argued that every aspect of the movie was now overshadowed by debates that might have been handled behind closed doors if the studio had planned more carefully. Caught in the middle were smaller voices, those from the dwarfism community, split between praising the chance for progressive change and lamenting potential lost roles in a major Hollywood production. And then the test screenings began. Whispers of mediocre responses trickled out. Some claimed the film felt unbalanced, hammered by conflicting visions. Pacing seemed off. The comedic beats didn't hit. The once magical world of Snow White had become a swirl of modern commentary and half-hearted nostalgia. Before the film could defend itself, the chatter took hold. Viewers labeled it a fiasco in the making, dubbing it the Snow White disaster. The label went viral and never really went away. Amid this swirling negativity, another rumor emerged, one that grabbed even more attention. Supposedly, Rachel Zegler felt Dinklage's initial commentary had sent production into a tailspin. She was said to be frustrated that his words ignited a public backlash so loud, the filmmakers seemed to forget everything else. If the behind-the-scenes gossip was to be believed, she confided to close friends that once the controversy started, the movie never found its rhythm. Every new rewrite felt like a frantic attempt to appease critics instead of serving the story. Was it accurate to place all the blame on Dinklage? Not everyone thought so. Even outspoken fans of Zegler found the idea suspicious. Many pointed out that while Dinklage's remarks sparked debate, other issues dragged the movie down too. Disney's own approach of quick fixes, the lack of a cohesive creative plan, and an overly safe or corporate style of modernization could all share responsibility for how messy things became. Still, the rumor wouldn't fade. The idea that Zegler might privately resent Dinklage for making this production more complicated caught on in online forums. Debates shifted toward who was really at fault, the actor who spoke his mind, or the studio that overreacted. Audiences, longing for a simple explanation, latched onto the narrative that one outspoken interview had torpedoed the entire film. By the time the film limped into theaters, the negativity swirling around it was impossible to ignore. Even Disney's usual hype machine couldn't silence the constant drumbeat of critiques. Early box office returns were underwhelming. Reviews were lukewarm at best, scathing at worst, and fans who might normally defend a Disney classic found themselves conflicted. Inside Disney, rumors suggested executives were already considering a future reset, possibly with an entirely new adaptation of Snow White. Names like Jenna Ortega popped up in fan discussions, fueling speculation that the company wanted a clean slate. Some even claimed internal disagreements about whether to continue promoting Zegler's film or let it quietly fade.
As an actor, you don't get to dictate anything. You don't get to dictate if a film actually happens. You don't get to dictate when it is shot, how it is shot, if you can ever speak about it to the public. You are simply just there to show up and say your lines and look the way they want you to look,
chalking it up as a hard lesson learned. Meanwhile, those who saw the movie often described it as two different films spliced together, one half determined to preserve the old world charm, the other half desperate to prove it was socially conscious. That imbalance led critics to slam it as a well-intentioned but ultimately jumbled attempt at progress. For some, it felt like a cautionary example of how not to modernize a beloved fairy tale. When it was all over, the phrase Snow White disaster became more than just a catchy headline. It was shorthand for a project that tried to do everything and ended up pleasing almost no one. The dwarfs were either sidelined or twisted beyond recognition. The main character became a symbol of controversy instead of a cherished icon. And behind it all loomed the question of whether a single outspoken remark could derail months of planning. For Rachel Zegler, the rumor that she blamed Peter Dinklage may or may not be true, but it was believable enough to gain traction, illustrating just how quickly blame gets tossed around in Hollywood once a production goes off the rails. For Peter Dinklage, it highlighted his role as an advocate, sometimes hailed, sometimes criticized, for more nuanced portrayals of dwarfism. And for Disney, the whole fiasco served as a glaring reminder that nostalgia can be a double-edged sword. Updating a classic requires a steady vision from day one. Otherwise, even the slightest shock can lead to chaos. With future remakes already on the horizon, fans wonder if Disney has truly learned its lesson. Will studios take a more thoughtful approach when tackling beloved stories, or will they scramble at the last minute and end up with another disaster? For now, the Snow White remake stands as a lesson in how quickly a film can unravel when it's pulled in too many directions, overshadowed by controversy at every turn. Despite everything, there's a lingering glimmer of curiosity. Will Disney try again with Snow White, giving the world a version that strikes the right balance between modern sensibilities and fairy tale magic? If so, the next actress to don the classic yellow, blue, and red might face even more pressure than Zegler ever did. But until that day comes, the Snow White controversy remains the kind of Hollywood story that sparks heated debates about progress, about art, and about whose voice has the power to make or break a legendary tale. Ultimately, there are no easy answers. Each party involved, Rachel Zegler, Peter Dinklage, Disney, and the fans, had valid perspectives. Yet the collision of these viewpoints birthed a controversy so big that it transformed a simple fairy tale remake into a cautionary tale of its own. And for everyone who followed the drama, one question lingers. What if the film had established a clearer direction from the start, ensuring that the dwarfs, the lead actress, and the modern twist could coexist without clashing? No matter where the blame falls, the Snow White remake's legacy might be that it reminded Hollywood of a difficult truth.
She's also just a spoiled, entitled, narcissistic brat who was perfectly willing, because she's not well, she might be stupid, but she's not so dumb that she didn't realize that by, for example, coming out and saying that all Trump supporters deserve to suffer for like, she's smart enough to know that, of course, that's going to upset a large portion of the potential audience for this project that I'm on.
Even the most magical stories can collapse under the weight of unchecked controversy, rushed decision-making, and fears about public perception. If there's one takeaway from this high-stakes drama, it's that reimagining a classic calls for more than good intentions. It demands unity of vision from the moment the idea first surfaces. Without that, no amount of star power or special effects can save a film from being forever labeled a disaster.